Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be discussing my August 2022 State of the Collection. I currently have a 6-piece collection and I keep my watches in this Mirage Luxury Travel 6-watch case. So all these 6 pieces are champagne watches for lemonade money. They meet my criteria of being both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So the first piece we're going to look at is the king piece in my collection. If I just had to choose one watch, it would be this San Martin SN004-G limited edition. Now, as you'll know from my previous State of the Collection reviews, I previously owned a watch which was very similar to this, the blue version of the SN008G V3. So why did I sell the V3 and why did I replace it with this 004G limited edition? Because they do look very similar both in proportions and also same blue dial and blue bezel colour. Well, the one detail I preferred about this 004G is the gear tooth profile to the bezel. On the V3 it has a coin edge bezel, and one detail I disliked about it was the tip of the teeth on the coin edge bezel felt sharp. So it wasn't particularly pleasant to operate, although it did look very aesthetically pleasing and it did look similar to the Black Bay 58 coin edge bezel, which is very low profile. But I prefer the more aggressive look of the gear tooth teeth, and also like the mirror polishing, it's actually finished to a higher standard. So I regard the quality of the gear tooth bezel on the 004G you're looking at to be superior to the 008G V3. Now, it's not the perfect watch, as I've detailed. The one thing I dislike is it uses the S crown rather than the hex crown. I think San Martin should update this to using the hex. The S looks like a US dollar symbol. It's subjective. Some collectors might like it. I personally think the hex is better because it gives continuity between the hex on the dial and the hex on the clasp, as you can see. Now, this 004G is available in 2 versions, the Oyster style bracelet you're looking at and also the rivet link bracelet. Of those 2, I definitely prefer the Oyster style bracelet, and it's subjective. Again, a lot of collectors prefer the aesthetic of this being an homage to the Black Bay 58 and therefore having a rivet link bracelet which looks the same. I like homage watches to have some differences. For example, this has a gear tooth bezel which is different to the coin edge bezel of the 58, and it also has the Oyster bracelet versus the rivet link bracelet of the 58. Now, I previously reviewed the Black Bay 58 and I really liked the watch, but there were 2 things I disliked about it. The rivet link bracelet was one. The other thing I dislike about the Black Bay 58, the blue version, is that there is a mismatch between the dial and the aluminium bezel insert, which is the midnight blue bezel. I think they made the dial too light on the 58. They should have made it darker, more like a navy blue. Now, San Martin have got this done better, and it's ironic because this is an homage to the Black Bay 58, but they've done a better job than Tudor themselves, because the blue tone of the bezel, which is ceramic, matches the blue dial. They made the correct decision by using a matte blue dial rather than sunburst finish or textured finish. I think that the colour tone match is outstanding. So I'll give you a wrist shot. Now, when I'm considering adding a watch to my collection, there are 2 criteria it has to meet: feel-good factor and comfort level. The feel-good factor of this watch is sublime. It is 10 out of 10. The comfort level is also sublime. It is 10 out of 10. Very well balanced piece, 39mm head of the piece, perfectly balances the 20-16, and 20-16 on an Oyster bracelet is perfection personified. So absolutely love it. The only one thing I would change about it is change the S crown to a hex crown, but other than that, San Martin have made the perfect watch. Gear tooth profile is more aggressive looking on the bezel rather than the coin edge bezel on the 008 V3. And having owned both, this definitely has the edge over it. Now, there is one minor detail that I would also change. If you look at the second hand, you can see there's a divot in the centre. And on the 008G V3, it has a capped second hand. And I actually prefer the way the light catches the second hand, which is capped on the V3. This is something that this doesn't have. And of course, this uses the 35A versus the PT-5000. So I like the 35A, but I would actually prefer if it had the 38 because that would delete the phantom date setting position. But however, this is a minor concern, and I'm perfectly happy with the 35A versus the PT-5000 because the 35A is more pleasant to manually wind, and of course it's more reliable than the PT-5000, which does have some manual wind reliability issues. So king piece of my collection, one of the greatest San Martin watches ever made. Now this one, the San Martin SN020-G2 limited edition, is one of the greatest San Martin watches made. And I like everything about it. It's unusual in that there is nothing I would change about this. This watch does not have any negatives whatsoever. I've reviewed over 300 watches in the last 2 years, 5 months, and it's very unusual for me to review a piece and not be critical of something, not to find one negative I would change. This is absolutely flawless. San Martin achieved perfection with this watch because, as you can see, it has the hex crown rather than the S crown. Now, the movement is the YN55A, which is an Epson caliber. San Martin have recently released a PT5000 version of this limited edition, but I don't think it's worth upgrading to the PT5000 version for the reasons I've outlined, the reliability and the manual winding of the PT5000 doesn't feel as pleasant. The YN55A is a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement, and San Martin actually made a very interesting comparison video between the 55A and the NH35A, where they broke down a 55A movement and they also put it on a time grapher. And they've confirmed that the 55A is equal in build quality, quality control, materials and accuracy to the 35A respectively, so there's no discernible difference between the two. I regard them as equal in quality, and also the architecture of both movements is very similar. They feel the same to manually wind. I actually prefer the feeling of manually winding this 55A powered limited edition versus a PT5000 movement. And also the crown pushes in. The winding stem doesn't have as much resistance. On a PT5000 one has to really force in the crown and winding stem into the movement to get the crown to engage with the crown tube. So the 55A is a credible alternative to the 38 or the 35A. I would prefer if this had an NH38 because again that would delete the extra click position, the phantom date setting position. But however, this is a minor criticism, one can live with the extra click position. And I really don't mind this having a 55A because it's been well used by Orient. They use it in the Orient Kamasu. The Epson YN55A is called the Caliber F6922 when it's used by Orient, but they are the same movement. So it's well proven in the Kamasu and a plethora of other Orient watches, and I think that it's a credible choice. I think the 55A is just as good as a 38 or a 35A. Just absolutely love the distortion of the double dome sapphire crystal, and it gives the impression of a vintage Hesalite, plexiglass or acrylic double dome crystal. It's got that characteristic distortion when one tilts it at an oblique angle, but of course it has the benefit of being more scratch resistant. Sapphire crystal is harder than Hesalite's plexiglass and acrylic respectively. I love the look of that top hat box style crystal. Very comfortable piece to wear. So I highly recommend it to you for your consideration. I think it's just one of the greatest San Martin watches ever made. No negatives to it whatsoever. It really is the perfect watch. And for a daily wear piece, it really is the ultimate because I love the symmetry of the dial with the absence of a date complication. Right, so moving on, another one of my favourites, the San Martin SN004-G2. So this is clearly an homage to the Tudor Snowflake Submariner. Again, the one thing I would change about this is I would prefer it if it had a hex crown. They've used the S crown, which looks like a US dollar symbol. The holes in the flanks make it easy to remove the bracelet and fit a strap, so that's good. Also adds to the vintage aesthetic. Absolutely love the case shape of this. It really is one of the greatest San Martin cases. It looks very similar to a Rolex 16610 Submariner, and they have captured the case shape of the Tudor Snowflake Submariner, although I think it would look better if it had an aluminium bezel insert rather than ceramic, although of course ceramic is more scratch resistant. Snowflake handset, very well proportioned. I love the symmetry of the dial. The Snowflake dial really does complement the Snowflake handset. Now, this isn't the ultimate San Martin. I would prefer if they released a blue version of it, and in the same blue tone as my 004-G limited edition, which I showed you, because I think a blue ceramic bezel insert with a blue Snowflake dial would just be perfection personified. So really the only thing it needs is a hex crown, but I absolutely love the proportions of the case, and again I really like the scallops on this bezel. I think it's one of the best San Martin bezels they've made. With the coin edge bezels, they don't really do a good job of them because they always have sharp points on the coin edge bezels. The gear tooth bezels, they mirror polish the teeth better. The scalloped bezels like this one, which is like a Submariner bezel, is actually better finished, and there are no sharp points to the teeth, beautiful satin finish to the scallops on it, and the proportions of the teeth are correct. Now, I really like the double dome sapphire crystal. Again, it's like a top hat crystal or boxed crystal, and it gives the vintage aesthetic of a plexiglass crystal, and I think it's very good, beautiful looking. I love the distortion of it, so I'll give you a wrist shot. Now again, this meets my criteria: feel good factor, comfort level, both satisfied. Very nice proportions to the 39mm head of the piece. Now, one thing I want to explain is I've collected watches for the last 24 years, and I've owned everything from a Casio F91W to a Rolex Submariner date, several versions of the Submariner and Submariner date inclusive. But my taste has changed because back in 2016 I had a preference for large dive watches, and I owned an Omega Planet Ocean 45mm which had the caliber 2500. And then I went through a phase of Steinhart Ocean 142s because I liked the wrist presence of a 42mm Ocean 1. But I realised that the 42 didn't actually fit my wrist very well because of this straight flat lugs, and then I switched to wearing 39mm versions of the Ocean 1, and I found the Ocean 139 is a better fit than the 42. And that was a surprise because I have an 8-inch wrist. I thought that the 42 would fit better than the 39. But over the years, since 2016 to the present day, my taste has changed, and I now actually really appreciate 39mm dive pieces because they have the vintage aesthetic of a vintage Tudor or Rolex piece from the 1960s or 1970s. Now, this is an homage to the Tudor Snowflake Submariner, which was in the 1970s, and St. Martin really have got the balance right between this being contemporary with modern day enhancements such as sapphire crystal and ceramic bezel insert, which are harder and more scratch resistant than an aluminium bezel insert, and a plexiglass or acrylic domed crystal. But it still retains the aesthetic because they have the Snowflake handset and the Snowflake dial, which is printed rather than applied indices. So it's the perfect balance, the perfect compromise between a vintage looking piece from the 1970s, such as the Snowflake Submariner, and also contemporary with the sapphire crystal and ceramic. I think it would be better looking with an aluminium bezel insert. I previously owned the Steinhart Ocean 1 Marine Black, and that was again an homage to the Snowflake Submariner. That had an aluminium bezel insert which I thought was better looking, but I disliked the case, which is the same as the Ocean 139 case, because of the straight flat lugs. This piece, the 006G2, has a more curved profile to the underside of the case, and I prefer the way the tops of the lugs curve. They wrap around the wrist better, and of course it has female pivoted end links, which mean this gives a nice snug fit to the oyster style bracelet. So, having owned the Ocean 1 Marine Black, which is a Nomon exclusive watch made by Steinhart, I actually prefer this. I think this has the edge. This is the ultimate Snowflake Submariner homage. I think it's better, although I do prefer the aluminium bezel insert that Steinhart use on the Ocean 1 Marine Black 39. So it's not the perfect watch. If they had the hex crown and an aluminium bezel insert, this would take it to the next level. And my ideal watch would be this watch, but with a blue dial and blue bezel. So I'm hoping one day St. Martin release a blue version of the 006G2. But one of my favourite watches, and I enjoy not wearing it for a month and then wearing it, and it feels like it's a new watch again, and it's very satisfying, and I remember why I like it, the reasons why I purchased it. Now, on to the Pagani design PD-1692 Air King homage. This watch was a surprise to me because I have previously reviewed the Rolex Air King, and I don't actually like the Rolex Air King. I wouldn't buy one and add it to my own personal collection. But ironically, I really like this Pagani design PD-1692, which is an Air King homage, because I think that this is actually better looking than the Air King itself, because it doesn't have the abhorrent yellow coronet on the dial as per the Rolex Air King. We simply have monochrome. It's black and white with the Arabic numerals, and then we just have green for the second hand and also the text on the dial. And I think they've got that right. So I think that too much colour on a dial spoils it, and I think that Rolex made a mistake with the Air King by having green, white and also yellow. Too much colour on a dial. Monochrome is better. I think black dials should just have white Arabic numerals on the dial. Green text is good because there is some contrast. It does add some interest to it. So I love the symmetry of it. I think it's very well balanced. They made the correct decision by using the 05 as per the current Rolex Air King, rather than having the previous version dial which just had 5, and that didn't balance the 55. So I absolutely love the proportions. The 1692 case, which is used in several models such as the 1692 Explorer and Air King homages, the same case is used in the 1733, which is the Milgauss homage. This is perfection. This 1692 case is one of the best San Martin cases ever made. They got the proportions of it done to perfection, and also the taper of the bracelet, 20-16, as I've discussed, is the perfect taper. So I'll give you a wrist shot. So this surprised me because when I reviewed it, I just fell in love with the watch, and I wasn't expecting it because when I looked at pictures of it, they didn't do it justice online. As always, the rendered images on AliExpress, and even when I saw a picture that the factory emailed me, I didn't like the watch because I don't like the Rolex Air King, but when I actually saw it in the flesh with this silver applied shield emblem, I just thought this is an excellent piece. I thought the feel-good factor is good, the comfort level is good, and I love the symmetry of the dial. The legibility is outstanding, and the other thing I like about it is this 1692 Air King and also the Explorer homage. They were the first first Pagani designs to use clear AR coating, and I think that is a great enhancement because the AR coating does a good job, and it's something I really wanted Pagani Design to introduce. So I'm really pleased that they responded to my feedback and my suggestion. I said, I think you should make a 1692 using AR coating because it would be a strong selling point, and of course it's been very popular. So they implemented AR coating in the 1692, the 1733, and also I'm pleased to report they've now introduced it to the 1717, and that's very good. On the 1717 it's blue tinted, but on this one it's clear. So feel good factor, comfort level is outstanding, very well balanced, feels weightless on wrist, and I just find myself, out of all the 6 watches, I pick this one up a lot. Subconsciously, I just enjoy the comfort and I love the feel-good factor of it, and I find myself wanting to wear it more frequently than the other pieces. So it's not the king piece of my collection, but it's one of my favourites. And one thing I want to explain is, it really doesn't matter to me what the brand is on a watch, what the logo is. For example, I've owned everything from Casio to Rolex, and I can honestly say that if a watch feels good and it's comfortable, that is more important to me than who makes the watch. For example, it doesn't matter if it says Rolex on the dial or Pagani Design. I really don't care what other collectors think of my watches. I buy them for myself, not for validation from fellow collectors. So that Pagani Design PD-1692 meets my criteria, and I think that there's no need to buy a Rolex Air King if the Pagani Design PD-1692 gives that feel-good factor and gives that comfort level. It does the same thing. So moving on, we have another one of my favourites, which is the Kronos L6015. Now, this replaces my Pagani Design PD-1727-V2, which was the white dial Daytona homage. I really liked the V2. And I enjoyed wearing it on the bracelet. I also experimented wearing it on my Benetto Centurini rubber strap, and also my NATO straps, and also my Hirsch leather strap. But I found that the bracelet gives the best comfort on the 1727V2. The thing that made me sell it was this watch, the Kronos L6015. I absolutely love the blue dial, the blue glossy enamel dial, and the blue ceramic bezel. Again, they've got the colour match correct. This Kronos, like San Martin, they deserve credit because the tone of the glossy enamel dial and the ceramic bezel insert, they are a perfect match. So I really like the look of it, the symmetry of having a no-date Submariner homage. And this, ironically, is the watch that Rolex should make themselves. They have never made a Submariner with a blue dial and blue bezel, as per the Smurf, which is the Submariner date in white gold. They should make a Submariner without a date complication, with a blue dial and the blue bezel, because I think it's just beautiful. I like the glide lock style clasp. It's very practical to have the on-the-fly adjustment, and it's done very well. Nice wrist presence. So it's clearly an homage to the 116610 Submariner, which I've previously owned, but of course a blue version of it. And they've done a really good job of it. I think that the proportions of the Submariner style maxi dial layout are very good. The proportions of the Mercedes hands are good. I like this silver Kronos applied emblem. Again, this is divisive. A lot of collectors dislike this silver applied Kronos emblem. I like it. I think it's done very well. The mirror polishing is good. Very enjoyable piece to wear. It has wrist presence, and I like the super case style with the thicker lugs. And it's sometimes nice to have variety, because my other pieces all have slender lugs and they're 39mm, and this is a 40, and therefore it wears with more wrist presence and heft. Proportions of the bracelet, as always, are perfect. 20:16 is the perfect taper. So feel good factor is excellent, comfort level is excellent, and I really like this because it's the NH35A version. Now, previously Kronos made the PT5000 version, and I dislike it because it's not as reliable and it's not as pleasant to manually wind, as I've detailed. So I was delighted when they released this NH35A version, this L6015. I think that it's a better option because, of course, it's less expensive, and I like the reliability and also like the feeling of manually winding a 35A. The only thing I would change is I would prefer if they used the 38, because, of course, it would delete the extra click, as I've detailed, on the winding stem, but I think that it's okay to use the 35A because of the reliability, and it's a good movement. So really like this piece. Good looking piece, very comfortable to wear, and very satisfying. And again, it surprised me, and I liked it so much I decided to sell my 1727V2 and replace it with this, because I like to have 6 pieces. Over the years I've experimented with a 12-piece collection, and then I gradually scaled down from 12 to 9 to 6 to 3, and then eventually I tried 1 piece. I thought just having a Submariner would suffice, but I actually got bored of wearing a Submariner 7 days a week. So then I moved back up to this 6-piece collection. I find that having 6 pieces is the ideal for me because it gives some variety, and one can also wear the watches frequently, and I like that, having that option. So lastly, we're going to look at my Pagani design PD-1692 This V3 is one of the greatest Pagani design watches ever made. Now, I say that, but the bracelet is abhorrent on this, and I've never used the bracelet despite having deburred the sharp edges. The bracelet that comes on the V3, it has sharp edges to the underside of the centre links and the flanks, and therefore it scratches the wrist and also pulls arm hairs. So although I've deburred it and polished it to remove the sharp edges, it still is uncomfortable to wear. Now, I've experimented, as you know from my previous reviews. I have tried different bracelets on it, and Uncle Seiko bracelets are a good alternative, and I'm looking forward to testing out a Strapsco Speedmaster style bracelet on this piece, and I'm hoping that that might be a good option. But in the meantime, I have been trying it on rubber straps, NATO straps, and also this Hirsch strap, and this Hirsch XL strap, which is their camel grain honey strap, is my personal favourite. Very comfortable to wear. I love the tone of the honey and also the camel grain texture to it. It's a padded strap, but it's very flexible and comfortable, made in Austria. And really, the quality of Hirsch straps is just 10 out of 10. Quick release spring bars make it easy to change. And I'll give you a wrist shot. So it makes it very lightweight, and I really like the comfort level of wearing this on the leather strap because it feels weightless on wrist. It really feels like an invisible watch. So one can wear this for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, and it really does feel invisible. Very comfortable to wear. So as you can see, the Hirsch camel grain honey strap really does complement the 1701V3, which is clearly a Speedmaster Mars. So the V3's white hands and white printed indices really do work very well. They look better than the V2, which had silver mirror polished baton hands and silver mirror polished applied indices. So one of the best San Martin watches ever made, and definitely the ultimate Speedmaster homage. Absolutely love it. I think the ceramic bezel insert complements the double dome sapphire crystal very well. So the only thing this watch needs is a good quality bracelet. The Uncle Seiko bracelets are good options, but they're very expensive. So I'm hoping that the Strapsco bracelet will be a good alternative because it's less expensive, and of course it should give a good fit because it has male end links and looks very similar to the Speedmaster bracelet. Now, having said that, I'm actually considering selling this piece because I've seen something else I fancy. Kronos have recently released a L6016, which is an Explorer homage in 3 dull colour options: black, blue and Tiffany blue respectively. Now, of those 3 options, the blue version, which is a matte navy blue, is my personal favourite, and I'm very tempted by it. Now, the only thing I dislike about the Kronos L6016 is that it uses the Miyota 8215. Now, I would prefer if they used a higher grade of movement, such as the 8315, which has a 60-hour power reserve, and also it's a better quality movement. It has hacking. I don't know if the 8215 that Kronos have used is the early version, which doesn't have hacking, or the later version, which does have hacking. So the other movement I would like to have seen them use was either the NH38 or alternatively the Miyota 9015, which again is a higher grade of movement. The 9015 would have been a better choice because it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and the 4 Hz gives a nice smooth sweep to the second hand. The 8215 runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and 3 Hz, which has a more judder or stutter to the second hand. So something to consider. I'm currently weighing it up because I dislike the noisy rotor on the 8215, although I do like the fact it does have BGW9 and clear AR coating, and it's a very good homage to the Explorer. So I'm thinking it over at the moment whether to replace this V3 with the Kronos Explorer homage. I haven't made my mind up. So I hope you've enjoyed my August 2022 State of the Collection discussion. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.